Good evening. We're live on YouTube, and as you can see, I've got a very handsome gentleman with me, unlike, horrible old Richard who looks like a troll. We've got Dr. Abs. Hi, Dr. Abs.
I see. I've been practicing my Welsh accent today.
Well done, Boyle. Very good. I mean, I've been using one Welsh word. I didn't really. I think this is quite funny that dogs or a dog in Welsh is gog, G-O-G.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So my good dog is now a good gog, which sounds better. Right. I've got to do my usual thing. Sorry. Welcome to State Control Britain, whereas two-tier justice and all that stuff. But we're not going to talk about that tonight because we've got Dr. Abs, we've got your questions. And, just wondering, is there anything that you want to get off your chest before we start? Is there anything interesting in your world?
Nothing interesting in my personal world, but just a little comment I have about this nutrition space in the past couple of weeks. When I first heard about the sugar diet, I genuinely thought it's a joke or some nutters doing it and it's just a fad. But actually, more and more videos are coming out and more people are doing it. I'm really flabbergasted at the fact that people are actually doing it. Like, I'm struggling. I'm speechless. But so I don't know what to say, but I thought I'd just mention that's the way I feel about that.
Yeah, well, it's ridiculous. And, you could go into a class of 7-year-olds and say, if I did this, I ate. Well, actually, you'd be struck off, wouldn't you? Right, you can have Sour Patch Kids candy. You can put sugar on your watermelon. It's ridiculous. And, I mean, Sean Baker did a nice experiment just to prove that it's protein restriction that's working, not anything else. Because he did a fat fast for 3 days, no protein, lost 8 pounds. But it's not about losing weight. It's about health.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Right. We've already got the questions coming in thick and fast, which is sort of how I used to be when I was 20 and running 100 meters. Right. First one is Kevin Hemingway. And I must say, with a name like that, I'm really glad that this is well written. Hemingway, one of my favorite authors. The Old Man and the Sea, which is very good. Right. You look very distracted there, Abs. Am I saying something?
I've actually got this on multiple screens. So I'm watching the actual live stream on another screen just to make sure it's coming through okay as well. That's all.
Right. Okay. Right. Kevin Hemingway. I have heard it mentioned before about blood testing. I've started on the ketogenic diet a few weeks ago. Is it advisable to have blood testing done? And if so, what markers need to be included? Which is a very common question. I have obviously a lot to say, but Abs, do you want to start off?
I mean, like I said, you're going to have more to say and more experience in this field. I'll keep it very brief because I think you should be the one answering this. But the only time I typically keep a hold of bloods when someone's starting is generally for things like my medical insurance, just so I've got a full set of records. Just if I can just say I've got records and we'll monitor everything. That's pretty much it, unless you've got a specific problem you're watching for. Other than those things, I typically don't. If someone's interested in figuring out what their current combination of diet and lifestyle has and where they've ended up now, and they just want to use it as motivation, they want to see their triglycerides going down over time as their HDL comes up or something, fine. But it's not necessarily needed. It's not necessarily healthy, even from a mental perspective. But it's not going to harm either if you do it with someone experienced like yourself, Stephen.
Thank you. Yes. Well, it's such a good question, Kevin. To me, it's a very broad thing to look at. Abs has nailed it. If you've got a particular symptom, let's say you think you're diabetic or you've got symptoms of diabetes, which of course is type 2 diabetes, like drinking lots of water, urinating a lot, then obviously you would look at your glucose markers to give you some idea of what your fasted insulin is, your C-peptide, fasted glucose, those sort of things. I do have on my website what bloods to get to ukcarnivore.com, and it's pretty extensive. One thing I would say, if you get into this way of eating, many people become biohackers and they love the data. And actually, it can drag you down chasing numbers because you forget it's all about how you look. You could have, and I've seen this, extensive set of bloods and they're allegedly terrible. And I say to the person, well, how do you feel? It's like the best I've ever felt. It's amazing. I've come off my diabetic meds, I've come off my depression meds, I'm sleeping, whatever. I can also conversely have people that have absolutely brilliant bloods, allegedly, like I say, and feel bad, or they can have terrible bloods and feel really good. That's the thing. It's about clinical presentation rather than bloods. But I would say if you've got something in particular, then obviously if you're worried about too much iron, or you then you get a full iron panel. If you're worried about your thyroid, get a full thyroid panel. But definitely do research. It's expensive. I wouldn't worry about it personally, but I also understand why you're doing that question. Sorry if it's a very vague answer, but Kevin, you can always email me or join our school community and talk about it more. So, right, great. Here's one from Daisy, or Day's Eye. This is with, but the flower's called Daisy because it's the day's eye. The flower actually follows the sun. There you go, a little bit of trivia. Anyway,
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that, right? Okay. Daisy, not me. I am occasionally getting dry, flaky palms, strict ketovore, and would like to understand why. Now, Abs is a skin expert, so I'll do my little bit like Abs just did, and then he can expand on it. If you've got, is that all right, Abs? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. Right. Don't forget. Well, it could be a condition like eczema. Could be that. What's called contact dermatitis is another thing, really common, like an allergic reaction to soaps and lotions. That's why I use Fat Cow Tallow soap, because it's just great for me. I think it's really good. Psoriasis, hypothyroidism can cause it. Diabetes because of the poor circulation. So I'm going to go to Abs now because that's my 2 penneth.
The first thing is, when you say occasionally, that's a vague word and it needs to be defined. Did it start after the diet? Was it there before? We need to know those things. And how frequent. Is it constantly there, or is it certain times of the year, certain times of the month, certain times of the day? It's such a big range of these things. And then when you say dry and flaky, they're 2 different things. So dryness means there's not enough water. Flakiness means the top layer of skin is coming off. Now, they are independent of each other, and people see a flake and they think it's dry because the flake itself, like it's dead, right? So you think it's dry, and the flake is dry, but it doesn't necessarily mean the skin underneath is dry. So it's actually a very difficult question to answer because there's just not enough information there. I would suggest it could be a number of things, related to the diet. To give one example, even oxalate detox can actually lead to parts of your fingers and palms actually shedding off, and even your toes as well to a certain extent. So I would suggest the best thing for that is to actually go to someone who can at least see a picture of it and then go from there. I know it's not a good answer, but the truth is I have no information to go off on that, unfortunately.
Yes. Right. Brilliant. I think we've covered that. I think hopefully you feel that we have covered that. There are many things. I mean, in Britain at the moment, we get this very big mixture of weather where it's very dry, very, very cold, very, very hot all of a sudden. So the difference in temperature and also going from outside to in and out can also cause sort of, your skin to be stripped of moisture, actually. So, and I will add this because this is something recent, in the last 5 years. If you've got obsessed with hand sanitizers, you need to ditch them. Really, they are not good. So I would put hand sanitizers under the label of chemical irritants. Right. So if you're waiting for Richard, by the way, Richard's had a bit of a sort of technical issue, so he's not joining us tonight. So we do apologize for that. Right, let's have a look at the next question. But we got Dr. Abs, so we've upgraded. Right, I'm sure Richard would laugh at that. Rightio, no carb barb. That's a good name, actually. Yeah, this is possibly one for me. I've been 95% carnivore for about 5 years. Come on, get up to the 100%. Why are you 95%? That's no good. In the last year, my RBCs, for people who don't know what that stands for, red blood cells, have gone up to 5.66 M, which is 5.66 million, for people that don't know, per microliter. I'm a 74-year-old woman. I don't have hemochromatosis, and my iron and ferritin are both within normal ranges. Well, a woman's normal range is between 4 to 5.2 million. So yes, slightly high. And really that is slightly high. The biggest problem I ever get when it's this high in an older person is dehydration. And the reason for that is when you're dehydrated, the concentration, because there's less fluid. Imagine this box is how much fluid you should have, and we had, let's say, we've got 5.66 million red blood cells in here. That might be right. But if you're dehydrated, imagine shrinking that box down but keeping the same amount of red blood cells. The concentration is greater. So it could be just a blip on your test. And and this is again very counterintuitive for people. If your urine is clear, it's possible you're dehydrated, you're drinking too much water, and your body is flushing out because too much water is dangerous. I know that sounds strange. It's better to get to the appropriate amount of hydration, which is where your straw-coloured urine is coming out. I haven't got my strips here, but you can test your urine with urine strips and get the specific gravity, which needs to be 1.03. And people get confused because when you look at the urine strips, all of the best numbers tend to be right at the beginning of the reference, except for specific gravity, which is right at the other end. Because the way the modern world works is they want purified everything, purified water. They don't want parts per million. But urine is a waste product. It should have some parts per million in it. So dehydration. Other things that can cause this, smoking. If you're a smoker, you don't mention that. The body compensates. It reduces oxygen. And again, that has an impact on the concentration of your red blood cells. There could be other things going on, but I would personally get another test. I would not overly worry about that number personally, no carb bar. But quite happy to hear from Abs, or we can move on. What do you want to do?
Just a really brief addition to what you say. When people worry about certain figures and things, and when you talked about urine, I've had patients come up to me and say, "Oh, I think I should drink this or eat that or do this so that my urine is, this pH or that level, whatever." And I just think that's a waste product. The waste product is whatever it needs to be so that your body is constant. Like if something goes up or down in your urine, that's a normal physiological response. It's not a problem. It has to go up and down so that your body doesn't go up and down and everything is maintained the way it needs to be. You shouldn't aim for something to be a specific level. You should aim to put the right inputs in your body and let the machinery and the outputs be whatever your body decides is the best. And it knows what's best, because that's what evolution was. That's what Darwin taught us all these years.
Excellent. Right. Let's have a look at the next question. Actually, there's a follow-up from No Carb Bar, but I'm just going to get into this because it sort of backs up what I was saying, that you need to just get another test. Is that why my fasting blood glucose is always around 100, 118? We're going straight back to concentration. Because if your HbA1c is 5.3, that would indicate to me, actually, I don't like the HbA1c, everyone knows that, but that's actually quite good if we're looking at the conventional way of measuring it. Your average is reflecting lower than the 100 and 118. So I would definitely put my money on, I'll put Richard's money on it, actually, on it being dehydration. I would definitely make sure that you drink appropriately. So not lots, just enough. Look at your urine. If it's too dark, you're not drinking enough. If it's clear, you're drinking too much. Get it to there and then pop in and get your blood test, because I think that would really help. Great question. You can always email me for more guidance about that or join our school group, which would be really handy. Right. Nickname. Nickname, by the way, for people listening on the audio, is 2 words there. Nickname. Right. How can one lose fat on the sugar diet if sugar induces insulin, a fat storage hormone? Well, straight away, it's also a feeding hormone. It isn't just fat storage, and insulin is so much more than a fat storage hormone. We use that sort of, what's the word, sort of brief phrase to explain insulin because it's quite handy, but it really does it a disservice because it's a feeding thing. It's anabolic. It builds you up. So if there's a lack of substrate, which there definitely is in the sugar diet, it will go to the fat and it will look for nutrients because it's protecting you. It is trying to build you up. The other thing about it is, and it's the sort of, everyone's talking about it, even though 12 years ago, I can remember FGF21 being the miracle new thing to cure diabetes. And it was one of the things is because you lose weight when you elevate it. You also elevate it when you're fasting. You also elevate it at a ketogenic state. You elevate it when you're carnivore. You elevate it when you don't have any protein or you restrict your protein. It isn't just about sugar, but it makes your mitochondria inefficient. And you see that the complex on the electron transport chain is wasting lots of energy. So complex 1, 3, and 4 produce more proteins. This has all been seen in actual studies looking at what's going on. And the ATP synthase is not popping out the ATP that you want. So it's making you an inefficient person. So it's going to start tapping into your fat stores and it makes you thinner. Yeah, there you go. And insulin is doing its job. It's building you up, saving your life. And we won't get into the effects it has on glucagon and all that sort of stuff, because I think we want to get into why sugar is making people lose weight. So it's making people lose weight. There's probably a ton of insulin being produced as well. So some people are saying, I'm eating lots and lots of sugar, but my blood glucose isn't going up through the roof. I thought it would. Well, no, your body knows it's toxic. And certainly at the levels that people are stuffing sugar into their bodies, you're going to get loads of insulin being pumped out. And because you're constantly putting sugar in, because I don't know if you've noticed, all of the influencers are like, oh, guzzling sodas and then having some orange juice and having some melon with sugar on, and it's just awful. You get the thing called insulin stacking. Insulin is infamous for being a thing that has a very quick half-life. It doesn't hang around long, which is why we use C-peptide as a measurement in preference to insulin a lot of the times to look at production of insulin. But because there's so much incoming sugar, you're pumping out insulin. You get what's called insulin stacking. It's just around all the time. And it's horrendous. But anyway, there is a mechanism. I have done a Substack on it. But, Abs, if you want to jump in, that would be great.
Yeah, I think I won't make it too complicated again, but fat loss is not just dependent on insulin release. Okay, it also depends on how much you're actually eating. Like if you're eating less than your body requires, you are going to break down your fat stores. Like it's just a fact, right? If you haven't had a delivery of your weekly shopping, you're going to root around in the cupboard to see what you've got. It's exactly the same analogy. As well as that, Stephen talked about the inefficiencies in the electron transport chain, which is true. And that's a very sort of specific biochemical look. Now, if you want to make it a little bit simpler and zoom out a bit, just a concept of changing, a carbohydrate or a sugar molecule into sort of a stored fat, shall we say, the glycerol backbone of triacylglycerides, that, without being too technical, again, it's not that efficient a process. Like we struggle to do that in the same efficiency as we do things, say, in a ketogenic state. And as well as that, if you're not having fat in the diet, you're not ingesting any, then you've got less substrate for actual fat storage. So you're not putting any in, and you're probably under eating. So you're going to have to use up what you've got. So you will oxidize your own fat because you're not taking any in. None of that is healthy. None of that is a sustainable way to lose fat. And if something isn't sustainable, you should really look into what that means in terms of, should you be doing that, for health? Not my opinion of health or your opinion of health, but health as nature has defined it. And it's just not. I know we don't need to go into it, but those are the reasons. But it doesn't change the fact that it's not a good idea.
Brilliant. That's excellent. All right. That's good. We have got a great question, I think, coming up. Where have we gone? Yeah, because I jumped, that didn't help very much. By the way, if you want to jump the queue, you can always give us a super chat or a super sticker, and you get your question answered quicker there by jumping the queue and supporting the channels. So, right, here we go. This is a nice quick one. Should I worry about my potassium level on carnivore without supplementing?
Should I take this, Steve?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, this is an interesting question. And first of all, worrying, should I worry about this level? Okay, it's the question is a nice thing to see because it shows you care and you are trying to be careful. So I applaud anyone that exhibits that level of care and self-respect. However, I would say you don't need to worry as much as you might think you do. And what I would say is the first question for me, if this is a patient in clinic, first thing I need to know is, okay, what's your medication? What's your medical history? What are your problems? What are your symptoms, etc.? That then sets the context of, okay, this is a level that you need, or this is too much, or this is too little, because there is no set number for too much or too little. That varies for each individual person. So straight away, you will realize then, I can't give you a certain level on like a serum level because I don't have all that information about you. So then the question is, well, how do I figure out where's my golden window between too little and too much? And that again depends on your starting state, your metabolic state, your medical history, etc., as well as your requirements for potassium. Are you someone that goes to the sauna a lot and sweats out a lot, 3-4 times a week, and you lose that potassium in your sweat? Okay, yes, then your golden window is going to be much, much higher. So it's not about working out what your golden window is. It's about looking for the symptoms of too much or too little. And if you're not having those symptoms, you're probably okay. So
Well, I think Dr. Abs is.
There we go.
Oh, you're back. You're back. Good.
Back.
Sorry, carry on.
Sorry. So my suggestion for people generally is make sure that you are using an amount of salt in your food that is simply acceptable for your taste buds, and use that as the gauge of where is the golden window. And then that's a good starting point. And it's a starting point that is individual to you. So the number of milligrams that equals, if you were to put it as a number, I don't know what that is. And I'll fully admit I have no idea what that is because I'm not your body, but your body does know. So that's always the most natural and safe starting point, I think. Once you've started on that, then you look at your symptoms. So if you do that and you find as though, you're feeling a bit lightheaded, maybe you're getting twitchiness in your legs, cramps, maybe you're having trouble sleeping, etc., then you may think, well, I don't know if my tongue is perfectly calibrated yet, because I've had so many foods with vegetable oils all these years, and then it's destroyed my taste buds or something. Then you just go based on your symptom and you increase the amount that you have. Once the symptom goes away, then you can probably drop it. And if you know that you're going to do some physical exercise where you're going to sweat a lot, you can preload a little bit. So you can have, instead of pure water in the exercise, you can have water mixed with a little bit of electrolytes because you're going to lose some. So as an example, when I go into the gym, I typically go to the sauna every single time afterwards. I just really enjoy it. So I don't sweat too much in the gym because I don't go to failure with my particular type of training, but I know that I will use potassium because of the potassium sodium pumps in the nervous system for the type of training that I do. Then sitting in the sauna, I typically try and get around 20 minutes now at around 85 to 86 degrees, which is quite a lot. And so I'm going to lose more even then. So I will have around 5 grams, sometimes 10, of electrolytes, of Richard's Keto Pro electrolytes, mixed in, and I'll sip that during the gym and during the sauna, and it'll be empty sort of halfway through the sauna. And that's fine. I don't feel lightheaded. I'm all good because I've worked it out for myself. So that's the whole process. Start with your tongue, then look at your symptoms. Once you're used to that, based on what you're doing that day, you can add or take away before you've even done it, because you know what you will or won't need on that day. Hope that's a nice overview.
That is a brilliant overview. Excellent. I mean, the thing is, worrying about everything is the problem that's created by influencers all the time. I'm actually pleased in a way that we've had this question when Richard isn't in the room, because people would say, oh, well, yeah, but you sell these electrolytes, so you're bound to say that. But you're looking at it from the wrong way, because he didn't start his health journey selling supplements. He started his health journey and realized that the supplements on the market that he needed were inadequate and full of junk, and so it's a passion of his. And I can assure you, he's worked very hard to sort of make a tenable business. When it comes to potassium, obviously, you can always look at symptoms as well, muscle weakness, like we've alluded to, and cramps and stuff like that. But I think try and get back to basics, everyone. How are you feeling? And then be a little bit more focused. I mean, this is the whole point of coming on this, and which is fine. I'm not ranting about the questions. The questions are great. But what I'm saying for people that maybe don't ask the questions, or that we don't get to the questions, do a lot of research to try. I deliberately and sadly listen to absolutely as much as I can from what I would call the other side, with their high carb and stuff like that. And I'm always thinking, one day I'm going to hear something sensible. I don't, but it's always good to see what people are saying. So, right, let's. I'm trying to star all the questions.
Can I just ask? I've got a quick question for you, Stephen.
Okay.
Just interested in which particular brands of salt you personally like to use.
I use Celtic sea salt.
Okay. Same as me, yeah.
Yeah. But to be fair, there are other good salts available. But yeah, it's such a good question. Well done. So here we go. We've got the next question from Knox Strength Personal Training. Hi there. Is it worth getting an omega-3 to omega-6 ratio test? Could this be checking the quality of if your meat is good? If recommended, do you still have a code from the Neovos company you use for vitamin D? Yes, I do. Going back to testing, is testing worth it? Yes, it is worth it if you feel that. Well, in this case, we're probably worried about inflammation, because the ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s is a big indicator of inflammation. If you have more omega-6s than you should have, so yeah, it would sort of work there. Or it could be down to cognitive ability, or what's the other thing? Memory. If you have problems like that, then maybe you should look at your omega-3, omega-6s, or just look at your EPA, DHA. Yes, I think it's a good thing. But again, if you've got no real worries, then I wouldn't. And you've got the thing here that I've got a code. Yeah, the code is really good for somebody to use, for me, because it reflects on me with that company, so I can get discounts for people. So the more people use that code, the better it is, because I can give a better service. But I'm also saying that you shouldn't be doing it if you don't really need to. So hopefully that comes across. Right. I just want to say at this juncture, we never get through all the questions. Normally, that's because Richard's here. All right. But just thank you. Just for those that think, well, you're not going to get to my question, you can join our school. And this is what we got. So what is Skool? The Skool community is a way of joining up with people. We have like a discussion board. We also have our classroom, where the more active you are in the group, the more courses you can do. So we start with a free keto course, because it's not just about carnivore. It's about low carb and keto. There's also tips on going carnivore. Then we talk about the thyroid with free ebooks, popular videos, same format with dairy, same with fruit and veg. Fruit and veg is really interesting, because I've managed to get hold of lots of documents from the actual producers and all their secrets about, for instance, apples taken from being plucked to being on your supermarket shelf over a year. It's not fresh. And it's all documented. You can all look it up as well. Protein, all about protein, problem solving, and some other bits and bobs when you get up there. And in the calendar, we do a live, as you can see, tonight at 7. Then we've got one at 8. Straight after this, if you join Skool, you can join for another half an hour. I do a one on Wednesday, and then on Monday we do another hour. So you get a lot of bang for your buck. So I will put a link in the description in a second. And if you join Skool, it'd be great to see you there. Right. And of course, we can also mention that Dr. Abs has a wonderful school. So do you want to just quickly talk about your school, Dr. Abs?
Oh, I wasn't planning on it, because I didn't want to barge in, but I do have one if you're interested. It's very different to Stephen and Richard's. I think Stephen and Richard's is more about educating kind of what you want to know, lots of Q&As, things like that, and then different subjects. I do a little bit different for those who want to be a little bit more academic, basically. So you've got a choice of what you want to go for. So typically in mine, we have topics, multiple times a week. We have all different topics all set out for the month: dental, medical, nutrition, cosmetic devices, all those kind of things. And we go through each and every single one each week.
Excellent. Okay, brilliant. And I'll put a link in the description at the end, or we could put one in the chat if you've got one. Get Fit question: what to do if my AST is elevated? Keto carnivore several years, number usually in the teens, 16 to 14. Now my AST is 28. Sorry, my ALT is 28 and my AST is 4. I don't think it's 4, but if it is 4, I'm really, really surprised. I've never seen it that low. I don't think it's 4. I think maybe you missed off a number. Maybe it's 40 or something, which is sort of the upper normal. That's the upper range. So if it's in its 40s, don't forget the range is 8 to 40. So I'm trying to be as sensible as possible. I can't believe it's 4. If it is 4, definitely email me. Because I think you need to do the test again. I think you just need, yeah. But I'm interested as well. So this is me being Dr. House. I don't know if you've ever seen that show, but if something's really unusual, I want to know why, because that's how we learn. Actually, we learn more from things that are really unusual than sort of average things that we see. Anyway, right, okay. So ALT is 28. Right. The fact is normally in the teens, and it's now 28. Are you working out? Are you training? That's still in range, by the way, because the range for ALT is about 70 to 40 as well. So they're probably not out of range, but they've gone up. That's what you're talking about. So it's normally working out. I would not worry about them, to be honest. I'd need to know more about it. But you also, if you really want to know about your liver function, then you need other things. You need GGT. You need ALP as well, and bilirubin, a couple of other things, because it's actually about the ratios of those 4 markers, those first 4 I mentioned: ALT, AST, ALP, and GGT. And it's the ratio between is much more telling than just the raw numbers. So I think that's something that I'd be interested in. And if you want to email me, you can with a bit more detail. That would be fabulous. If I'm missing super chats, I do apologize, by the way. Oh, 41. Yeah, I'm not. Excellent. Thank you. Right. I would not worry about that, to be honest. I really would not worry about that. I know you said they've gone up, but they go up for more protein in the diet, working out, those sort of things. All right. Let's go to the next thing. I'm trying to do this. It's strange because normally what happens, Richard takes so long. I get forever to look at the questions, make sure I'm doing them in the right order. So,
You're on I'm keeping you on your toes today.
You are. You really are. So, right. Here we go. I think we're nearly there. Potassium we've just done. We've done that one. How about this? Have we done this one? Sharon is saying low carb keto 10 years. Well done. Carnivore 16 months post-menopausal. Never diabetic. No prescriptions. Fasting insulin is 4.8 and it's increased to 10.4, which is pretty interesting. HbA1c is 5.7 and consistent. Trigs are 37, which is incredibly low, which is great. HDL is 120, so that's a great ratio. Total cholesterol 257. Not understanding the increase in fasted insulin. Right. Well, it's possibly, without knowing you, Sharon, more protein. There's been a big thing recently about the fact that there's an influencer I'm not even going to name who talks about insulin suppression. He doesn't even understand insulin suppression, and he thinks that if you take carbs out of your diet, it's not sustainable because you won't get an insulin release. Well, you do. You get an insulin release from protein. And if you've gone up into a higher protein level, insulin isn't just about getting sugar out of your bloodstream. It's about building muscle, and it's about protein synthesis. It's an anabolic hormone. That's what it does. It does so many more things than that. So you've gone from keto to carnivore. So what have you done? You've reduced carbs. And many people think, well, I've reduced carbs, so there's going to be less insulin. But no, because what's happening is you've got more protein. So you're going to build structure you're going to build bone, you're going to build muscle. Total sense to me, what I'm saying, by the way. It is marginally higher. And I think once you've fully adapted to carnivore, you'll see it come back down again. But at the moment, your body is probably building things, building up your thyroid, building up your organs. There's so many things that improve bone mineral density, and insulin is a major player in that thing. So hopefully that's put your mind at rest. I was just going to say the great numbers, triglycerides to HDL ratio looks pretty good. I know some people don't think that is good, but of all the not very good markers, it's one of the best. Okay, right, from Abs.
Oh, sorry, is that sorry. Okay, I'll add very briefly. So, fasted insulin, it's yes, it's fasted, but just because you're eating less carbs, like Tima said, it doesn't mean you're not going to have an increase in the insulin to glucagon ratio at any point. You can still have it, because high protein intake, if you eat a certain amount of protein, that will actually stimulate insulin directly, which is good. Like, we want that. It's it's part of our normal physiological response. So the insulin goes up in a situation like that. It's not a bad thing. And if you're not eating carbs, you're also going to be going into gluconeogenesis as well. Gluconeogenesis can elevate the glucose, and that has a slight insulin response, so that we have a break on gluconeogenesis as well. And it's like a back and forth mechanism to keep things in the right place. It's part of our homeostasis. And then you've also got to look, and this is a difficult thing to measure, but what's your general kind of everyday stress level? Are you moving house? Are you going through a divorce? These kind of things can have an effect on our body, and change levels of things if needed. If you're having more frequent meals as well, that prevents the insulin to glucagon ratio from fully dropping down to the same level as if you were fasted, which might be sort of less than 1 in that ratio. And then poor sleep, overtraining, these can have effects on insulin signaling as well. I don't think that this would I don't think this is relevant to you, but also in certain patients, steroids, PCOS, things like that, they can have an effect too.
Excellent. That is really good. Thank you so much. Right. I suppose
Can I just do a quick shout out, Steve, to someone?
Shout out to who?
DC Rebuilding. So this is a guy, I listened to the video with him in New Zealand. He is a cancer survivor. He got told,
yes,
this is it, like you've only got a certain amount of time to live, blah, blah, blah. And he's completely changed his life around. And not only has he changed his life around, he's using it as a platform to show other people what is done to help those well. And I think it's fantastic. So big shout out to him, who's watching right now at whatever ungodly hour it is in New Zealand right now.
Yeah, I want to interview him, and I don't know, I just can't seem to get hold of him. But there you go. Right, super chat.
I'll do an intro.
Cool. Thank you so much. Super chat from Run for Remy. I love this. After 4 months strict keto, I caved and had pizza yesterday. Absolutely not worth it. Didn't taste as good as I thought it would. Back on it today. Well done, Run for Remy. And I think that's a story for many people when they try these things. It's not as good as it used to be. And, when I did my CGM experiment and I did carbs for a long time, which ruined and wrecked me for many months. Only 8 weeks on carbs and it absolutely ruined me, which is incredible. It didn't taste as good. I tried porridge oats. Porridge oats used to be, wow, I love porridge oats in the morning. I can't believe that I liked it. And I had a little bit. And boy, just porridge oats on its own was so sweet. I couldn't believe it. If I had time, if Richard was yabbering on, I'd put my experiment I did recently with eating 1 Mars bar to prove that when you're fat adapted, you still have loads of insulin. But anyway, right, let's do the next one, which is this one here. Sharon, she is saying thank you. So I can't get that up on the screen. I'm going to, there we go. Right, Sharon, she has also done a super chat, $4.99. Thank you. That's okay. Our pleasure. We are here to answer your questions and do the best we can. You see, actually don't talk enough. Right, let's get into the next one. Do you lean mass hyperresponder? We're very close to the question. Oh yeah, that one's good for you. Let's do that one while I find where I am, because Abs needs this one, I think, because it's a skin one. I've been minimum 80% carnivore for the last 2 years or so, 100% the last month. Well done. And I'm struggling with spots, pimples, inflammation on the face. Is this likely to clear up over time?
Interesting question. The short answer is maybe, which is not a useful answer, but it is the true and honest answer, because it's so multifactorial, right? Your skin is affected by so many different things. Diet, in my personal opinion only, no evidence, but just my opinion, diet is the biggest factor, that in terms of what is in our conscious control of what affects the skin. And then we have things out of our control, or largely to an extent out of our control, like the environment, the pollution level, things like that, which we can get a hold of to a certain extent. But when you go carnivore, depending on what type of carnivore you are, then it may or may not clear up. And what I mean by that is, let's say you are 80% carnivore, okay, whatever that means for both of us. Something in that 20% could still be, for your individual genetics and makeup, something in that 20% could be triggering issues in your skin through mechanisms which you don't necessarily need to know right now, but they could be that. When people go 100%, then typically we do start to see, at the very least, slow reversals. It depends also, in my opinion, and no evidence, just my opinion, it depends on the level of acne you had to start with, the level of, shall we say, metabolic dysfunction, if there was such a thing as a way to measure that, if we could, that you start with as well, and any of the medical conditions, any of the medical problems, medical medications that you're taking. All of these come together to paint the overall picture. So nothing changes in terms of the advice of nutrition, which is still, eat as appropriately as you can for the fact that we're Homo sapiens. Nothing will change that. And we can then experiment with certain things. So it could be that, you need a little bit more help to reverse some of the damage. So carnivore, typically, I find in certain cases, it will prevent things getting worse, which is fine. Most people will take that. But there are issues which are built up in the skin which need treatment, active treatment, to actually reverse that damage over time. And I'm speaking a little bit vague, but it's because there's such a wide array of things that it could be as well. So if we've gone carnivore for a certain amount of time, whatever that time may be for that person, and it's not getting worse, never gotten worse, but it's not fully cleared up, then we'll potentially combine carnivore with some kind of active clinical treatment. Once that's cleared up, because they're staying carnivore, it never really comes back, because we're all good. Like with this, there's no new triggers because you're having the right diet, and we've cleared up what was there as well. In terms of what is that active clinical treatment, again, that's a whole new can of worms, and I will speak Richard-esque for 4 hours on that if time was permitted. But also, there are so many different clinical treatments out there. There is no one single one that's the best. The best thing you can do is actually to go to someone who's experienced in all of them and just have a frank, honest conversation. Someone who's experienced in all that and who knows the right way to eat in nutrition, as we're talking today. Not many of us around, unfortunately, but they're the best people to go to, who can then assess what's best for you and make a plan that's unique and specific just to your individual skin.
That is so good. Thank you so much. There is, and the next question we're going to go to, I'm going to go to the starter questions. Oh, that's not good. There's questions before that. Let's have a look at this one. This is Solar Dave. Friend found out he's a lean mass hyper responder and was really worried. So he did research and found that he should increase carbs to 100 grams, but it would put him out of ketosis. But he also wants to continue doing carnivore keto diet. Any advice on that? Well, the lean mass hyper, yeah, right. So the lean mass hyper responder is Dave Feldman, Nick Norwitz. It's what they call a phenotype, where you fit a certain thing, where you're very lean. Obviously, you have lean mass. That's part of the name. And you're hyper responder because your LDL cholesterol is elevated, and you also have low triglycerides and high HDL. So it's sort of those four things, or the triad of the numbers from the bloods, makes you a lean mass hyper responder. When they did this study, the criteria to be a lean mass hyper responder was one thing, and then that was from the preliminary when they put the idea forward, and then they changed the sort of parameters on that a little bit. Now, where does this increased carbs to 100 grams come from? I have no idea.
And also, why is it such a round number as 100? What's that coincidence?
Yes. There is no reason on earth to have 100 carbohydrates at any point whatsoever. The only justification I've ever sort of thought, well, that might be a situation, is after you've done 2 hours of very high intensity exercise and you still want to keep going, maybe 5 grams, just to stop yourself going hypoglycemic and your brain shutting you down due to the central governor theory. But anyway, we won't get into that because that's not really answering your question. So 100 is at least 20 times more than I would look at as a maximum, to be honest. Would it kick you out of ketosis? Well, if you are going to have 100 grams of carbs, it probably will kick you out of ketosis because the body's pretty smart. It will start using the carbohydrates because it's toxic, not because it's a good thing. So Solar Dave, if your friend needs to do proper research, that would be my answer, because I can't actually see the joined up thinking in that. I don't know where this 100 grams of carbs come from. And also, how tall is he? What's his activity levels? Where does, as Ab said, why is it 100? Why is it not 47.5? It's crazy. So, yeah, I don't really get that, to be honest. Right, I think I jumped the queue there to get to that question because there are so many. Let me go back a bit and let me see if I can find the right one in the right order. I do like to do that if I can. Here we go. That, I think I feel a bit better now. Peter, I had radiation for Hodgkin's in neck area, and that's why I was told it had messed up my thyroid. So on 150 grams of L-troxin, can carnivore help? Been carnivore 1 year. Can carnivore help? You're taking T4, by the way. Right. Sorry, firstly, to hear about that, because, that is a common treatment for that particular condition, and your thyroid is very sensitive to radiation, so possibly you were warned that that was a possibility. Anyway, it's happened now, so you allegedly then get hypothyroidism. It means your thyroid isn't producing enough thyroid hormone. You'd be interested to know that T4 is the predominant thing that it produces, and T4 then goes into your system and converts to T3. So, can carnivore help this? Yes, absolutely. Because what carnivore does is it gives your thyroid a lot more of the raw materials that you need. So, for instance, you need essential fats. Low fat's not going to do it. Carnivore is, because it's got fats, and fats are cofactors in the production of thyroid hormone. It also will give you protein to build structures within your thyroid. The functional units of the thyroid are capable of storing 50 days worth of thyroid. So anyone that comes to this way of eating from low carb, calorie restriction, whatever they've done, they can't even produce 1 day's. All right. So on carnivore, you see that they do come off their medications. That does actually happen. I'm not saying that's going to happen to you, but we see that happen with the physician working alongside the patient, and also lots and lots of bloods. We can look at TPO, TG antibodies, and all that sort of stuff. So yes, carnivore will help in very simple ways. It's going to reduce systemic inflammation. That's going to make your thyroid work better. You're taking out anything that's inflammatory, like grains, legumes, processed foods, because all of those things interfere with your thyroid function. So the less inflammation is going to be really good, but also you're going to have some other things like zinc, selenium, and iron. You're going to get iron in heme form, which is much better. And all of those three things take that artificial T4 and help make it T3. So that would be a good thing to do. And if you want to add anything, Abs, you can add, or we can go on.
I would like to add, I'm going to be a bit of a Scrooge here, to add a bit of a downer on the conversation, but I just want to be a bit of a realist for some people, not necessarily Peter asking the question. Anytime you've had radiation therapy, any part of your body, one of the first things you have to ask yourselves is, okay, what have I got left in that area? Okay, what has been damaged, purposefully by the radiation? That's why we did it. And what is still okay? How much function do I have left in that particular area? And if you've got a complete death of certain areas, certain tissues, you can't click your fingers and make those tissues suddenly fresh, like nothing ever happened. And so when you have radiation therapy, sometimes it's about not necessarily trying to reverse things to the point where you almost had no radiation therapy if you were to look at the tissues. It's about making sure the tissues that remain have the best possible chance of working as efficiently and fantastically well as possible. And I think what Stephen said, I completely agree with all of it. And I think that is the right perspective to have in terms of the nutrition and why it works. But you should apply it in the context that I've just said. It's not going to bring back lost tissue, but it will improve the function of remaining tissue as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for the clarification. Yeah, I was being sloppy, wasn't I, really? So here we go. Yeah, slap on the wrist. Jonesy lad 142. Any advice on taking creatine on a keto diet? I have IBS, so would like to try the HCl version, which is excellent. Just for those who don't know, it's a more soluble form of creatine, and it dissolves better in water. So I'd imagine that would be a preferable version. Shame Rich is not here, because I think this would be a question he'd love to give you 2.5 hours lecture on. With the HCl, yes, it's probably less likely to cause you digestive upset. So I think that would be good. I think that's all we need to say on that, unless you've got something you want to add.
I'm going to be a bit of a Richard here, actually.
Go for it.
So when you look at the variations that you have in creatine, essentially, apologies for being a little bit technical, but I think this explains the reason why we have different variations that are capable of different things. Some of what I'm about to say may not initially make sense on first pass. So please watch this back and Google things or look things up if it doesn't quite make sense. But essentially what you're doing is you're trying to attach the creatine with a chemical partner with a certain difference in electronegativity. So for example, if you look at the electronegativity between hydrogen and chloride, which is hydrochloric acid, the hydrogen and the chloride, they will separate once they are ionized in, say, a solution. The speed and ease with which they separate makes a difference to how easily the separate components then become available. So if you look at Richard's ketone products as an example, he has, let's say, sodium BHB or potassium BHB. It's because sodium and magnesium have different strengths to hold on to their partner, and so they come away and release their partner a little bit differently, quicker or later. It's like if you're dancing with someone and you've got a certain amount of superglue between you and your dancing partner. If there's more superglue, they're going to come off a lot later. If there's no superglue, they're going to detach from you very, very quickly. So we have different teeth whitening systems, ones that work overnight because there's a lot of superglue between those dancing partners, and the active ingredient is released more slowly. You have whitening systems where they work over 45 minutes or in the office, in dental office, because there's no superglue between those dancing partners, so they're released very quickly and everything floods the teeth. So when you have creatine, you're trying to understand the variations in creatine based on the ability to dance with a particular partner. So creatine hydrochloride, that is a little bit more soluble because of the way that the hydrochloride comes away compared to, say, monohydrate. And so what that also means is if you're going to have different variations of creatine, if being the key word, and not that I'm recommending you to do it, but if you're going to, you have to understand that different amounts of superglue between these dancing partners equates to different amounts required to achieve the same biological outcome, shall we say. So hydrochloride, roughly speaking, based on the papers that I personally read, which none of them are fully controlled, but you will probably be looking at, let's say, 40% of the dose compared to if you were on, say, creatine monohydrate. So if creatine monohydrate might be a 5-gram dose recommendation for you individually, then you would drop creatine hydrochloride to get 2 grams for the same, roughly speaking, the same effect. Bless me.
Bless you.
For roughly the same effects. So if you are going to take it, don't just think about creatine. Don't just think about creatine hydrochloride. You have to look at the dose. And if you have IBS, sometimes that's not necessarily a good thing in my opinion. I don't have evidence for that. But in my opinion, it's not necessarily going to help because you're not actually treating the root cause of the IBS. IBS is not caused by a lack of creatine hydrochloride in the same way that obesity is not caused by a lack of Ozempic injections. So you have to understand you're not treating the root cause. My advice would be to you, use your budget, use your mental resources and your willpower and your energy, trying to find the root cause rather than looking at creatine, because it's not necessarily going to improve muscular performance. It will increase the amount of water you're holding on to. And so your muscle then has to move more weight with the same number of myofibrils, the same number of muscle fibers. So it's not necessarily actually going to improve performance that much. The amount of creatine we get in things like beef is going to be absolutely enough. So my personal recommendation, if you're going to take it, drop the dose down in terms of grams relative to monohydrate, if you're going to take it. But otherwise, I personally don't recommend that people take it, especially if you're on a carnivore diet. I don't think it's necessary at all. There's a Richard-esque answer for you.
Yeah, I was sitting here glowing in the Richard vibe coming from you. But that's
sending Welsh vibes through the screen.
Even Richard always says, if you can get what you want from food, then you don't need to supplement. And we're very consistent with that. And I think that's great because he makes his money from supplements, but he does tell people, let's go for the food first. So yeah, you are very Richard-esque, as you say. So we got time for one more question. I'm going to do a abs specific one from Jason, and then we will do like half an hour in school. So here we go. Right. Regarding a mineral buildup on the back of teeth, on the back of top and bottom teeth after 18 months carnivore, teeth and gums have had a massive improvement on stability and cavities. Thank you both. I don't really see what the question is, but do you want to comment on that?
I think the question is, why are we seeing that mineral buildup in those specific areas when you go carnivore? This is a bit of a longer answer, but I'm gonna refer you to a brilliant channel called Kevin Stock, who does talk about this in some detail. And that's why I haven't done a video on it, because there's nothing for me to add, and Kevin's done a great job. But if you have that, my advice would be, regardless of the mechanisms for that, that's not as important. Okay, you don't need to understand the mechanism too much. You need to understand the consequences of it if left alone, and how that is potentially good or bad for you. That's more important. So I would say, if you have that build up, that is what we call a plaque retention factor, because the surface of that is nothing like the enamel on your teeth. The enamel on your teeth, for all intents and purposes, like a bowling ball. It's so smooth, right? Unless you're Spider-Man, you're not going to have any grip on there. And so that when you have this build-up, which is what we call calculus, or tartar in more colloquial terms, it's called calculus because it's calcified plaque. That is a very rough surface on a microscopic level. So it's very easy in all the nooks and crannies for more things to get retained, more plaque, to then cause more calculus. And that is the issue. It's the rough surface. Underneath, the tooth is actually protected technically. It's not really any harm there. It's the surface of the calculus that's the problem. If you have that, just go to your hygienist, get it cleaned off. It's not worth having. If it's a tiny, tiny amount, fine. Maybe go to the hygienist less often. But if it is building up regularly, see a hygienist regularly, and don't take any shortcuts. If that grows and grows and grows and gets bigger, and it really starts to affect the tooth, is it going to affect things like the recession, the receding of the gums potentially? It's possible, depending on the individual teeth, how much, etc. So don't take that risk. If you notice it, go and get it cleaned up and listen to what the hygienist has to say about why it may have built up in that specific area. Maybe the teeth in that area are slightly crooked, and so you can't get your toothbrush bristles in there. So you can't use a toothbrush there. And they might say, actually, for that individual contact point between those two teeth, for you specifically, don't use a toothbrush, use this little TP brush instead, or something along those lines. And you have to pay attention to that. If that builds up, it's a potential risk for dental health. So focus on that rather than the mechanism will be my advice.
That is brilliant. As a dentist, do you recommend the Dental Diet book by Dr. Stephen Lin?
I've not read it, actually. So no comment.
No comment. Okay, that was the final question. I put a link in the chat to our school group. If you want another 30 minutes of Dr. Abs, will you be joining us?
Yes, I will.
Yep. Brilliant. I'll put the link in your WhatsApp. For everyone on YouTube, thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Abs, for doing the YouTube hour, dropping in at the last minute to pick up where Richard's tech issues are causing a bit of a problem. It's been a real pleasure to do it with you, Abs, and I look forward to seeing you in school and maybe other people as well. Cheers. I'm going to end it now.